Jack Harris's peaceful retreat was shattered when armed imposters hired by his HOA barged into his cabin in the dead of night, abusing false authority to intimidate and control. The HOA's ruthless grip over the neighborhood masked a corrupt system that thrived on fear and deception. But then Jack's relentless courage led him to uncover a hidden FBI operation and expose the imposters' reckless interference, turning the tables completely. Just wait until you hear how this tense battle for justice unfolded and why truth ultimately triumphed over corruption. Jack Harris had always dreamed of having a place far away from the relentless noise and endless demands of city life. After years of saving and sacrificing, he finally bought a small cabin by a remote lake in Minnesota. It wasn't much, a modest wooden structure nestled between tall pines, but to Jack, it was a sanctuary, a place where he could breathe, think clearly, and recharge away from the pressure of his engineering job and the constant buzz of Chicago. He cherished the silence, the gentle ripple of the water, and the starry skies that seemed impossible to see in the city. For months he had visited the cabin on weekends, slowly making it his own. Each visit brought a deeper sense of peace, a refuge from the world. Then came that night. It was just past midnight when a sudden, forceful banging shattered the quiet. At first, Jack thought it might be some careless neighbor or a wildlife disturbance, but the sound was unmistakably deliberate. Someone pounding on his front door. Jack's heart jumped. His neighborhood was governed by a homeowners association, or HOA, known for being overzealous with rules and quick to complain. Maybe this was another complaint about the noise or parking, something petty and irritating but nothing serious. He got up, his footsteps light on the wooden floor, and peered through the window. What he saw made his blood run cold. Four men stood on his porch, dressed in dark uniforms that looked eerily like police attire. They wore badges that gleamed faintly under the porch light and holstered weapons at their sides. Handcuffs dangled from one man's belt, but something about them didn't feel right. The uniforms seemed off. The badges didn't match any law enforcement Jack had ever seen, and their movements were too aggressive for a simple welfare check. Before Jack could react, they pushed the door open, stepping inside without waiting for permission. Their voices were loud, authoritative, demanding to know where Jack was and if he was alone. They claimed to be there for a welfare check after complaints from neighbors, complaints Jack had never been made aware of. Jack froze. Questions flooded his mind. Why would the HOA send armed officers to break into his cabin at midnight? Was this even legal? His calm refuge was now invaded by strangers wielding fake authority. He tried to reason with them, telling them he was perfectly fine, that he hadn't broken any rules, that no one had a right to barge in unannounced. But his words fell on deaf ears. The men ignored his protests and began searching the cabin, their manner growing more hostile by the second. A fierce burning anger began to rise inside Jack, less about the intrusion itself and more about the audacity of it. How could anyone claim such power without accountability? How could his sanctuary be violated by imposters masquerading as protectors? That night marked the beginning of a battle Jack never expected, a fight not just for his peace, but for his very rights. The morning after the midnight intrusion, Jack woke to a restless mind and a simmering fury he couldn't shake. His peaceful retreat had been shattered by those men in fake uniforms, and the questions clawing at him refused to be ignored. Who were these imposters, and why would the HOA, his own neighborhood's governing body, go to such lengths to intimidate him? Jack pored over his laptop, scrolling through HOA meeting minutes, online forums, and community newsletters. What he uncovered was troubling. The HOA wasn't just a group enforcing neighborhood rules. It had become a shadowy force wielding power without oversight. Residents whispered about unfair fines slapped on minor, even imagined violations. Things like a slightly overgrown lawn or a car parked just a little too long on the street. Many had been bullied, threatened, and silenced if they dared to speak up. The deeper Jack dug, the clearer it became. The HOA operated like a small, unchecked regime. Their leaders relished control and punished dissent with ruthless precision. And that night's raid, it was no random act. It was a calculated move to scare him and anyone else who might challenge their authority. But the truth that hit Jack hardest was that the men who had stormed his cabin weren't police at all. They were hired enforcers, paid by the HOA to act as their muscle. Men who flaunted fake badges and uniforms. Men whose job was to frighten and intimidate, crossing legal lines with no regard for the people they targeted. Jack felt a wave of hatred crash over him, not just for the men who had broken into his home, but for the system that allowed this corruption to flourish. His sanctuary had been transformed overnight from a place of calm into a battlefield, a place where justice had been replaced by fear and deception. Determined not to be silenced, Jack vowed to expose the truth, no matter the cost. The quiet life he had dreamed of was gone. But a fire had been lit inside him, a fire that would not be easily extinguished. Days passed with Jack's anger burning hotter, but he kept his focus sharp. One evening, just as dusk settled over the lake, Jack noticed movement outside his cabin window. Those same fake cops. They were creeping stealthily onto a neighbor's property, their shadows long and suspicious in the fading light. Something about their behavior felt reckless, dangerous. Fueled by a mix of rage and resolve, Jack grabbed his jacket and slipped quietly out the door, determined to find out what they were up to this time. Keeping his distance but staying close, he trailed the imposters through the thick woods, heart pounding as the scene unfolded before him. To his shock, the fake cops weren't just prowling the neighborhood for trivial violations. They had stumbled straight into the middle of a highly sensitive FBI operation next door, an undercover sting targeting an international smuggling ring. Real agents in tactical gear were silently coordinating the bust, their presence barely visible behind the cover of trees and shadows. Jack realized immediately the gravity of the situation. The HOA's hired thugs, with their reckless intimidation tactics, had almost blown the entire operation. Their unauthorized intrusion could have compromised months of painstaking FBI work, risking the safety of agents and the chance to bring dangerous criminals to justice. Without hesitation, Jack dialed the number he'd found on an FBI tip line weeks earlier during his research. Speaking quickly but clearly, he relayed everything: the fake cops' identities, their movements, and the potential disaster unfolding just yards away. Within minutes, real law enforcement swarmed the area, containing the situation before it spiraled out of control. Jack's courage and quick thinking had prevented catastrophe, safeguarding the operation and ensuring the imposters faced exposure for their reckless actions. For the first time since this nightmare began, Jack felt a flicker of hope. The truth about the HOA's illegal tactics was now in the hands of those who could bring justice, and he wasn't alone in this fight anymore. In the days that followed, the FBI moved swiftly. The fake officers, those men who had shattered Jack's peace and invaded his home, were arrested without resistance. More importantly, a full investigation into the HOA itself was launched, peeling back the layers of corruption, intimidation, and abuse of power that had long been hidden beneath the neighborhood's calm surface. Though Jack was still shaken from the ordeal, a deep sense of relief settled over him. For the first time in months, he could breathe without fear that strangers in counterfeit badges would appear at his doorstep, disrupting his life. The forces that had tried to silence and intimidate him were finally held accountable. The HOA, once untouchable in their small community, was put firmly in its place. Their unchecked reign of harassment was exposed to the light of law and truth. Jack realized that standing up, even when the odds seem overwhelming, could spark change. One determined person, refusing to back down, could dismantle a corrupt system. Jack Harris's story became a quiet beacon for others in the neighborhood. It was a powerful reminder that darkness and oppression, no matter how deeply rooted, inevitably give way to the courage of those who dare to confront them. Justice had been served, and with it, a promise that truth and bravery will always shine through.